Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode on the High on Data podcast. I'm Krishnan Venkata, Chief Client Officer at LatentView Analytics. And joining us as our guest today is Antonio Hidalgo, the founder and CEO of Growthride. Growthride focuses on helping businesses turn strategies into actionable plans for sustainable growth. Before founding Growthride, Antonio served as the EVP and Chief Innovation, Marketing, and Strategy Officer at Philips, leading brand repositioning, product innovation, and digital transformation. He also led leadership roles at Mars and Procter& Gamble, specializing in innovation, R&D, product and development. Significant years of experience that he has, Antonio has driven successful product launches and digital initiatives across industries. Welcome to the podcast, Antonio. Happy to have you with us.
Thank you, Krishnan. Happy to be here.
Great. I just wanted to dive right into this and digital transformation as the topic. By 2027, it's stated that the global digital transformation spending is forecast to be reaching 3.9 trillion US dollars, right? And as a leader in digital transformation and change management, you have seen firsthand how organizations are moving through this changing ecosystem of technology, right? So, in your experience, what are the key factors that organizations should focus on while starting a digital transformation journey? And how can they ensure that change is both sustainable and impactful?
It's a great question to start with, Krishna. You don't really beat about the bushes. You go straight to the point. Love that. So I've done some thinking about it because I knew that you were going to go that way. And here are my sort of like top five thoughts. First one is you got to make sure that the purpose of the digital transformation is aligned with the business strategy. A lot of people talk about that, but it's amazing how not often that is done. That's the why of your digital transformation, whether it is unlocking new revenue streams or improving the customer experience or driving operational efficiency. That's the number one and perhaps one of the most important ones. You've got to be able to define clear and tangible business goals and the customer outcomes that you want from your digital transformation. That is, I call it the what of the digital transformation. So you're going to do it. So what? What are you going to achieve with it? You need to define, I don't know, the number of new revenue streams that you're going to open, or the amount of new revenue or profit that you're going to unlock with those,
Right.
or the level of engagement or advocacy that you aspire to achieve from your customers with your digital transformation. Number three is a committed leadership that really walks the talk. I think you've seen it like I have. It's very easy to sort of pay lip service to digital transformation. It looks good, it sounds good. Everybody wants to be seen as it is been doing a digital transformation. But what you want to see is a leadership that's visibly and actively engaged in the execution of the digital transformation, not just on the strategic setting of it. They need to experience the excitement. They need to listen and acknowledge the concerns that the organization is going to have, and they need to support them all along the way. I think that's the best way to demonstrate belief in the digital
Right.
transformation. You've got to have a granular implementation and follow through. Otherwise, it's all hot air in the clouds. And importantly, in here, making sure your decision making is data centric. I think we're going to talk a lot about data today. It starts by making sure that your follow through plan has data-based decision making, so you make steps along the way, already walking the talk. In digital transformation, data plays obviously an important role. Last but not least, number five is not to forget, perhaps, although I know that we love data, we're in this world, but in the end of the day, we are still needing people to do the work. And we must make sure in any digital transformation that we display a commitment towards your human capital, your people. They are going to be feeling uncertain about this change, focusing on technology, IT infrastructure, system, business processes, skills, training. All that is important and critical. In the end of the day, it boils down quite often to people.
No, great points, Antonio. And I like that 5 point framework that you have laid out. You touched upon data, and you said the foundation is data. And I think this is where organizations start having problems, right? They struggle to bridge this gap between data collection and action. And a lot of times we find the issue is basically data silos. There are different departments that are storing and managing data differently, and it is difficult to integrate and analyze them effectively in cohesion, right? Now, Can you provide an example from your time in terms of when there were misleading data insights, and how do you ensure that businesses overcome these data silos and make relevant decisions?
Yeah, it's such an important, especially your reference about overcoming data silos. So there was a time that we were facing a loss of profitability, which was beginning to become too long. And our cost appeared to be stable.
Right.
We've been looking at the problem from, like you well said, from the different silos, the product people or the financial analysis have not really been able to give us a clear answer. So actually, we decided to get all together and start interrogating the business and try to capture the data end to end in quite a granular fashion. So when I say end to end, is all the leaders and the key players who were running the project together, looking at things like product range, product mix, customer, and so on. I'll give you some examples. For example, we looked at the product range together as the end-to-end leadership group, and we noticed that the long tail was quite present, but actually nobody had really dared to tackle it. And that's because it had typically been discussed within a particular silo. Once you brought it into the whole team, people began to ask questions. Why do we have this? How long have we had this? What's the role of the various SKUs in the long range? The breadth of the dialogue allowed us to ask different questions to the data that gave us new answers. But more importantly, it gave us the energy to actually do something about it. The product market mix, how well products fit into the go-to-market channels that we were using. Different products and different channels have different profit models. It's like we're looking at what we were selling, to whom and why, and where to sell it. But by being together in interrogating the data, we were able to ask different questions than were being asked before. We did the same thing to customer responsiveness, and we discovered that we have become over responsiveness. In other words, we were responding to a plethora of customer requests that actually didn't translate into revenue and profit. But again, because of the way in which this data was discussed in that silo, we were never really able to arrive to the conclusions that we arrived then. We did the same thing with customer support, with technical services. We looked at promotion, and we realized that in the end of the day, the biggest advantage, go back to what you said before, Krishnan, is that we have been trying to answer the questions from all the various silos of the company, which corresponded to the sort of functional organization that we had. And it was only once we began to interrogate the data end to end as a leadership team together that we began to create different questions that led to different answers and actually action that we had not done before.
I think that's a great point, Antonio. And you brought this topic of interrogation, and I think that's important, right? So now, assuming that we are ensuring that the data silos are removed and we are getting the departments to work together and collaborate on the data, I think the interrogation part is important for making informed and strategic decisions. How do you ensure two things, which is the insights or the interrogation that you're doing is generating insights that are actionable? Um, and what do you do to ensure that these insights that are coming are actionable in things that are related to the strategy and related to the strategic vision that the company has? What are your thoughts on that?
Another good question. I think in the end, the quality of your interrogation and your insights that you arrive to is going to be directly related to the quality of your strategy definition. If your strategy is woolly, not well defined, high up in the clouds, very difficult to connect any kind of detailed data analysis to a very high level type of strategy.
Right.
So it's important to be able to articulate your strategy in a very clear, tangible manner with very clear measurable goals, and importantly, key leading indicators. The things that will tell you whether or not you are on track or off track towards achieving those end outcomes. It's the first one. Once you got that, then you can use those goals and key leading indicators to define the critical business questions that the data will need to answer to achieve these objectives. I mean, in perhaps in one of the simplest terms, if if your strategy is to say, we need to shift towards more profitable customer segments, a company that wants to go perhaps from commoditized segments to more niche premium ones, would have to first of all ask today in their current business, what are the most profitable customer segments, to start making that shift towards that profitable direction, and then looking at what new potential profitable segments they could open. Or if they're looking at removing operational inefficiencies, well, then you would looking at, okay, which operational processes are contributing to the most of our inefficiency or our cost, for example. So it's connecting your questions to the goals and the key leading indicators that you have defined in your tangible, actionable strategy.
Great point, Antonio. Can you share an example of how asking the right questions in data interrogation has directly influenced a strategic decision or outcome in your experience?
Yeah, this is a. I loved. I mean, we could spend a long time talking about this. I
Yeah.
love this area. There was a time working with I was doing food as well, as you know, in a food situation where we were engaged in making the strategic decision as to whether or not enter the emerging plant-based food solutions category. Um, there was no direct assets or competencies in that space, but we thought that there were significant transferable capabilities, business positions, and assets that potentially could be used should the company choose to enter into that space. And some of the questions that we ask ourselves and were used to, therefore, interrogate internal and external data were things like, obviously, you start with the consumer or the customer, and then you were asking, for example, are health considerations driving purchase, truly purchase? We know that they were being considered by lots of customers and consumers, but were they really, really driving purchase choice? And if so, by how much? The same thing with ethical and environmental considerations. We looked at market dynamics and, for example, asked ourselves, what's the profit entitlement of these various segments in the plant-based food solutions category that we were contemplating? Because if there wasn't enough profit, the company had some very clear guidelines as to where to play and not to play. And we needed to know whether that category anyway would be one that we would want to play in on its own right. Was there demonstrated sustainable growing demand, or was it sort of like a fad? And that by market. Which kind of plant-based products offered were actually providing taste and texture and nutritional profile that was actually meeting consumer expectations, and which ones were not? What were the sort of product and portfolio gaps that we could see in the market? We looked as well at manufacturers and food producers, particularly asking questions around to try to discover the degree of product innovation and diversification that companies producing and selling to a large degree animal-based products were doing. So were they diversifying and innovating in areas beyond that sort of core animal-related product or not? We asked questions around, is sustainability a goal that has been declared openly and strongly? Because if that is the case, then obviously that would have to inevitably translate into adopting more sustainable practices, among which potentially plant-based production with a lower environmental footprint could be incorporated. This is just some of those. We did the same thing interrogating farmers, the whole agricultural industry, the agricultural supply chain. We looked at investors, what's been done and said, where was the money flowing. We look at shareholders, we look at regulatory bodies, we looked at governments, we looked at influencers, opinion leaders. I mean, the long is very list. But you've got to do it that way. In order to answer the question, you've got to cast the net quite broad, but then what you need to kind of focus on what you want to know. But I think at the beginning, the most important thing is to cut the nest wide as you can.
Yeah. No, Antonio, I think that's a really great example, and thanks for sharing a lot of that detail. Very, very interesting on how you weave that entire story. Now, in your experience, what are the biggest challenges that leaders face in extracting these valuable insights from data? We talked about the example in which how they could successfully do it, but what were the challenges that you have seen?
Yeah, I think I go back to strategy. What you said. I mean, I could talk about people, but that's more about implementing.
Sure.
In this case, I think it's not aligning the questioning with the business strategy. That leads to data, to potential insights that don't really deliver against the need of the business at a particular point in time. For example, if your current strategy is to consolidate a profitable, healthy business core. Say that's what you're after. Um, then having a group of the company who's kind of pushing diversification data and insights, about opening new future revenue streams and new diversified opportunities and all that. As exciting as those could be, those are insights that are not relevant at a time where a company is focusing on consolidating
Got it.
a profitable, healthy business goal. So aligning with the business strategy, and it has to be number one.
Got it. And how do you think that this role of data interrogation that we were talking about has evolved in the rise of these advanced technologies like AI, machine learning, and what are you seeing in the space, and how do you think this role is going to change?
Yeah, I mean, look at Gen AI. Sometimes I forget I'm talking to a algorithm. In all honesty, I really do. I think natural language has humanized interaction with AI solutions so much. It helps us all ask better questions. I think it helps me ask better questions because it feels like I'm having a dialogue, like I'm having with you, and I think that eventually is going to facilitate a more sophisticated data interrogation, perhaps a more complex data interrogation in real time. I mean, we both know that the brain is not linear. The brain, the human sapient brain operates, cognitive
Right.
brain operates by making non-linear connections. You cannot even predict what connections you're going to make in your brain. They just happen. And I think that ability to talk with your Gen AI as if you were talking with another human, and then start co-creating, even brainstorming. I love to brainstorm with my Gen AI algorithm, and it sometimes tells me, even gives me feedback. Oh, we've just done a great co-creation session. It's like, what is this? I'm getting feedback from an algorithm, but I forget that it is an algorithm.
Right.
Um, Again, I think that way we can interrogate much larger and complex data sets than before, which anyway AI and machine learning algorithms will be able to do, are doing. In doing so, they can uncover perhaps patterns and insights that we could not see before. Um, Obviously, predictive analytics have played a role. I think they will play a role in continuing to identify trends, forecasting future outcomes based on historical data. That can also improve your data interrogation. And I think that's where, if you think about going further with AI technology, perhaps towards prescriptive analytics, suggesting optimal actions to achieve a desired result, yeah, that could be a breakthrough moment.
Yeah. Great. So we talked about initially data silos, then we talked about data interrogation, and we said, okay, we have learned how to analyze and interrogate this data. Now, the question comes to quality, right? And every year, poor data quality is estimated to cost organizations $12.9 million on an average, right? Apart from the revenue impact over the long term, there's also poor quality data also increases complexity of the data ecosystem, even poor or dangerous decision making, right? Then you have the quality of the questions that you pose during the data analysis to determine the quality. So I think there is a lot of things that go into this. Is just the quality of the data, the kind of questions that you ask. So in your view, I wanted to check what are the key obstacles that leaders are facing when they get these insights to turn them into action, especially when the data is going to say, okay, you need to do a big change.
Yeah, time and time again, time and time again. No matter how I cut it, whether it is strategy into action, insights into action, decisions into action, choices into action, um, I always end up in the same place. It's people. It's people that make it happen, and people that can become an obstacle to making it happen.
Absolutely.
I think when big strategic insights lead companies to consider significant change, pivoting the business model, entering completely new markets, embracing new technology, those big changes, often coming from big insights, require the organization to also transform itself in order
Right.
to understand, to embrace, and to implement, the direction that those new insights is providing. And I think successful situations, I'm looking at many failures I haven't had myself, and perhaps some successes. It's when those insights are turned into action because we as leader put, this is, look, the measure is for me would be look at how much time, money, support, effort you put into creating, arriving to that game-changing strategic insight. And then ask yourself, how much time are you putting, time, effort, investment, real effort, real attention to helping your people understand, embrace, implement truly. Quite often, we arrive to these insights, to these decisions, a PowerPoint appears magically, and then, okay, someone's going to implement it somehow. Or you have like an implementation team that is not really that empowered, and so on. So, it's about balancing the time and attention and effort and intention that you put in creating the insight with what you do to implementing the insight.
Great. And I think you talked about people, but what role does a data or structured data framework play in ensuring that the insights are actionable? And how do you think that the leaders can ensure that the data is organized so that it's clear, or it is clearly helping drive decisions?
Yeah, I'm kind of single-minded on the key challenges, and this time I'm going to take you back to strategy.
Good.
We said that we needed to align with the strategy, that the strategy had to be tangible, actionable, with clear objectives, clear key leading indicators. I think here's where you go one step lower in granularity. This is where you say, have you prepared a well-structured OKR, for example, system that includes key results, key tasks, key activities, key performance indicators, and all that. If you have that, you can use that OKR system as a framework to build, I'm going to repeat the word, as a mechanism to build an effective data framework. Because that way you ensure that whatever questions you're asking, insights that you're creating match some of the key results or key
Right,
tasks or key activities or
right,
key
right.
indicators that you have in your OKR system. It becomes self-sustaining.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And now I'm actually going back to the point that you brought out, which was on resistance, right? You said that change management will be required when there are big decisions to be made, right? But there is a lot of resistance sometimes, when the data says that you need to do a significant shift, you need to restructure teams, or you need to discontinue products, right? These have direct impact to people's goals and some of the things that they're doing. How do you manage these resistance?
Yeah, Krishna, you love making difficult questions. So this, I think that's the $1 million question, or $1 billion question. I think if I had the right answer, I'd probably be, giving lectures all around the world on this topic. As it is, I was talking about this a few weeks ago at one of the local technology universities where I live, precisely on this topic of change management for highly advanced technology engineers. Look, I think there's a whole bunch of things you could do, but if I give me a moment to reflect on my own experience, and you got to start with the basics. You got to start by presenting the data, and I want to make the connection to the data in here as a
Right,
mechanism, indeed, for us to overcome some of the challenges. The challenges in change are data and emotions. The logic quite often doesn't play a role in here. The logic goes all the way as understanding the data, but then the emotions kick in and what you do about them. But you got to start by presenting the data, showing the gap between current state, the desired state where you want to go, do that in a compelling manner, highlight why the change is necessary, emphasize the consequences of inaction that's sometimes forgotten. Staying, stand still, it's actually going backwards. You got to involve the key decision makers, that goes without saying, but also the influencers are across the organization, whatever level they are in, the people that the organization listens to, the ones that they respect. Those people, you need to find out, are they on board? And if they're not on board, how can you bring them to become on board? And then build a plan, collaboratively, your implementation plan, your change plan. Do it collaboratively. Involve people across the entire business and layers. Again, I said that before, acknowledge their concerns, truly acknowledge their concerns. Try to put yourself in their shoes. They may be concerned about their jobs. They may be concerned about
Right.
their own professional credibility. They may not have the skills. They may feel that they are never going to have the opportunity to really re-skills themselves. Most people can, but at the beginning, many of them are afraid of failing and of what their bosses might do if they fail. Once you got those influences and your collaborative plan, you'll identify some change champions. They're bound to be people that believe in the change. Work with them, empower them, have them build advocates around themselves. Allow them to create like a bottom-up change network. They'll build their own social networks to drive that change. Empowering them means that it will not be anymore about your change as much as it will be about our change and their change. They'll take responsibility. Yeah, maintaining the dialogue. Once you've done all that, you've got to keep talking, you've got to keep listening, celebrate, that's often talked about, not often done. I like to celebrate small little things. I think they are more meaningful than the big things. Celebrate many, many, many little things. Adapt as you need. There's one that I like as well, which is when it comes to implementation. Obviously, we all like to think big. But I think that we should always start small. See if you can create a chain reaction of small events that together will give you the end result. And all along the way, make sure that you secure alignment, that you stay on track, that you stay focused, and as a leader, like I said before, role model your behavior. Get in the trenches, not only up in the strategic boardroom, but get in the trenches, feel the fun, feel the pain, and be one of the gang.
Yeah. No, I love the way you called it, which is work with them, empower them, and make them advocate and make it our change rather than just the organization change. I think that I love that empower part of it. Um, I wanted to actually talk about generative AI here, right? Now, obviously, with generative AI, they're in almost every decision making, and there's growing use and pressure for organizations to use Gen AI. There needs to be some balance, right? Now, organizations can get a lot of AI generated insights that are actionable. And how do you ensure that they are actionable and not data overload, that these insights are not coming thick and fast and present pressure on these? Because you need to manage change in a managed fashion, the way you said it. And how do you ensure that these insights don't become too overbearing?
Yeah. Look, I think at this stage, the technology is so emerging, is so new. There's so much that we don't know.
Right.
They're saying, you know what you know, but you don't know what you don't know. I think this is the case for AI now. We just don't know what we don't know. I personally have accepted and sort of try to share that perspective with others, that there is a large degree of trial and error that we are inevitably are going through now. There's quite a lot of empirical approach to AI nowadays. A lot of people are trying, and that is teaching the algorithm what to do and what not to do, and so on. So at this point in time, I think we probably need to have a little bit of acceptance for some overload, for some time. Accept the consequences of embracing something which is very, very, very new. But then the question is, how do you capture the learnings that your organization is creating as it uses the tool? So what are the mechanisms that a company is putting in place so that suddenly you've got, I don't know, 1,000 people, 100,000 people, 10 people using AI professionally and personally? But let's talk about the professional side. How do you capture what they're learning? How do you do that? Should there be some sort of platform where they do it? Should you make a deal with the AI provider so that it gives you additional insights onto what this AI tool is doing for that company? Can you get access to the data for your employees, anonymized and so on, so that you can interrogate the AI conversations in order to capture insights? What is the organization interested? What is the organization trying to resolve? How effective it is or it isn't? So for me, it's more about how do we learn? How do we know about what we are learning and make that we don't know smaller?
Right. No, this has been very insightful, Antonio. Um, we are already in 2025 now, and I think it's a great way to start the new year with resolutions, right? So I've got two resolution questions for you. And the first one is, do you have a personal resolution for the year?
A personal resolution? Yeah. Well, I have the joy in the last 3 years to have become grandfather of granddad of three little girls, and which is wonderful. And they're all very tiny now. But I've committed to myself to allow the child in me. Again, with my interactions with my grandchildren, an opportunity to be told off by mom and dad. In this case, being their moms and dads, and that's an opportunity of enjoyment and sharing my values of what's important to me with my grandchildren in a way which is fun for them and for myself.
That's really adorable and love that. I mean, it's a fantastic age, and you've got them young, and I like the fact that you said the child in you. That's really nice.
Yeah.
I wanted to switch now and wanted to understand on the business side, uh, with your role in digital transformation as a leader, consulting with a lot of these top companies. What are your top resolutions and priorities for this year to drive actionable insights among the organizations?
Yeah. So for this year, I have quite recently pivoted the business towards emerging growth in health tech, in food tech, in brand tech, in intelligence tech,
Nice.
either in emerging businesses or in sort of new business units of larger companies. The larger multi-billion enterprises were the companies I was working with, because that's where I come from. But now in 2025, I'd like to really, really focus almost 100% on working with leaders and their organizations in emerging growth. Um, they already embrace growth, but I'd love for them to also embrace digital mindsets. And that's more than digital technology. We've talked about it quite a lot today, and use that digital mindset together with their growth mindset to build and scale up businesses in these spaces, and then support them to turn strategy into action, which is really, really what I love the most to get stuff done. In order to do that, data, technology are going to be critical. And like we said before, the human touch together with data and technology, may give us the sweet spot, and that's where I would love to go. And I'm looking forward to getting to the next stage of my own personal growth ride. So there you go. That's me for this year.
Oh, that's very cool. No, that was very interesting and also sounds very exciting. I'm going to keep in touch with you, trying to get updates in terms of how it's going. And I think it's a great time to be in emerging tech. There are so many things happening, so many things changing. I think there can't be a better time for you to be there. And that's so wish you all the best and wish Growthride all the best. And thank you, Antonio, for making the time, joining us, providing a lot of those insights, being patient with a lot of the questions. I love the examples that you talked about, and I like the fact of how you talked about the person and the people, right? When people are talking about taking the human away, you're talking about putting the human in the center of the action. And I love that part. Look forward to staying in touch, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Krishna. It's been a real pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Pleasure is ours. Thank you.